Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a hefty one. Might be two parts, I don't know yet as of me recording this, but you'll know by the end of the video if it's in two parts or not. Today I wanted to talk about all of the things that we've been getting recently from the development team of Overwatch and of course Overwatch 2 as it relates to kind of the future of the game from the PvP livestream that they did, as well as the AMA and the community Q&A that they did with some creators behind the scenes on some other platform. I don't even know where they did it technically because I'm not involved in that, but Stylosa made a video on it, so I just kind of pulled some of the things from there that I found interesting. So I'm going to do kind of a brief video touching on all of these things. Well, it won't be a brief video. I'm going to try to cover all of these three things in one video to kind of give you the most important stuff as I saw it. Now, I'm going to focus primarily on things relating to the competitive side of the game and the professional side of the game. And so things that don't really have an impact on that, I'm not going to really talk about unless I think it's really, really important. So if there's something that you're curious about, they talked about lore and art direction and all that kind of stuff. Those types of things are talked about in the AMA, for example, or in the live stream. And so if you want to learn more about the game and more stuff about the future, obviously check out any of the things that I'm going to link to in the description where you can see more on all of it. But I am going to try to make this somewhat brief as much as can be with the amount of things that I am going to be talking about. So that is really all that I can I can say at this point in time. So let's start with the first thing, of course, the charity live stream, not charity live stream, PvP live stream, the first thing that they did for the week, basically. And of course, this is where they announced all the big stuff, and then they kind of went more in depth and stuff later on. So the big things from the live stream, of course, was the announcement that Overwatch 2 would be played 5v5 as opposed to 6v6. Instead of 2 tanks, 2 supports, and 2 DPS, it is going to be 2 DPS, 2 support, and 1 tank. And so they are going to basically combine together the tank roles to kind of make them all play in a bit more of a brawly style. This is something they talked about back at BlizzCon Online. They were kind of trying to make tanks more brawly. And I think, a lot of people then kind of were starting to say, like, they might be switching to 5v5 with 1 tank. And then, of course, now we know that that is exactly what happened. So that is the big news that came out from there. And then they kind of just spent a lot of the stream talking about that. But there were some other things that they did talk about that I wanted to bring up. 3 specific heroes they showed major changes for, or at least somewhat major changes for. And they are Mei, Zarya, and Winston. For Mei, her neutral, or not, her primary fire no longer freezes the opponent to the point where they don't move anymore. It just slows them down and does increased damage. So you can still use abilities, you can still escape from it. You're not going to get frozen in place from her primary fire, but you can get slowed down and you will take more damage. They did confirm later on, which I think I'll touch on this a little bit later, but Mei's ultimate does still freeze you in place, but her primary fire no longer does. For Zarya, the change is that they gave her 2 bubbles, and it's just a shared cooldown for the bubbles, just like the experimental card that we saw back in the start of April. So you can either bubble your teammates twice, you can bubble yourself twice, or you can use one on yourself, one on your teammate. So I like that change a lot, so that is a change they made. And then for Winston, they added a ranged attack for him, so it's his secondary fire. So if you right-click instead of holding the left-click, instead of just having lightning that kind of just does its normal thing where you're like shocking the person consistently at short range, you can get like a little ranged burst you can charge up and fire at people. So those are the hero changes. I think those are pretty good changes overall, and so those are things that I'm a big fan of. They also showed off a new look for Torbjorn, just kind of normal types of things that they do with the hero designs. So it's his Overwatch 2 redesign, and we got our first looks at the maps New York, Rome, Monte Carlo, and Rio. We obviously already had seen Toronto back in 2019. We saw that one again as well. So that's all the big stuff from the live stream. I'm going to quickly give my thoughts on it. I think the hero changes are fine. Mei, Zarya, Winston, I like all of them. The design stuff is whatever. The maps looked pretty nice. I thought they were really pretty and really well designed in terms of like the way they looked. It's hard to gauge what they look like in 5v5, when in gameplay, because we're not used to 5v5 yet, so I don't really know quite yet what they look like, but I do think that they will be fun, and I think that looks really cool. The big thing, of course, is the change from 6v6 to 5v5. It is the big topic that everybody's talking about. There is a lot of discussion about it on both sides. You know, on one side, you have people who think that this is going to be really bad for the game, especially like pro players, because it's going to destroy the careers of some of your tank players, right? You're going to lose a ton of tank players. You know, a worst case scenario, 50% of all tank players in the Overwatch League are no longer in the league. You know, some people are saying that this is all to save money from the esports side of things. There's a lot of different takes on this. As I view it, I think it is ultimately going to be better for the game itself. I think that it is a strong change for the game, because when I speak from experience in terms of my play time, and look, I'm not great at the game, you know, I'm not a high-level player, so my experience is different from a lot of other people, but I'd say my experience is more of the like general average experience that a lot of players have. My experience playing tank is that tank is the one role where like you really don't have the same level of agency to pick the tank that you want as you do in other modes or with other roles, right? Because of the way the tank is, it's so upfront and it's so in your face that like if my teammate picks Reinhardt and I don't pick Zarya, you know, people get so angry at you, right? Or if someone picks Roadhog, it's the only time where like someone picks a hero that I'm like, we are going to lose no matter what. Or I'm just like, I don't know how we're going to do this. Because if someone picks Roadhog, like, what are my options? Sigma, Orisa, Zarya? Like, I like Zarya a lot, but I don't think Roadhog Zarya is a super great composition unless you're at a really, really, really high level. And I think Sigma Hog it's okay. It's not the worst composition in the world, but you know, I'm not crazy about it, and I don't like playing Orisa, so I don't want to play Orisa Hog ever. So it's the one role where I feel like there's such this culture surrounding like perception of tanks, and the reason why people don't want to play tanks is because they're not as fun, and you get vilified so much by teammates depending on how you play. And so I think that with those things in mind, going to 5v5 is a lot better, because if I want to play Zarya, I can play Zarya. And maybe Zarya is not the best option, but I don't have to worry about what my other tank is playing. I can only worry about what I'm playing, and I can play what I'm good at and what I'm best at, and that is the best way to go for that. So I actually do think 5v5 is good. I think there are definitely concerns for pro players who may, you know, end up out of the league potentially. But I think that ultimately most of them will end up with teams, right? Like, most likely there's going to be more than 8 tanks, which is what there are currently. There's going to be probably 10 or 9 at launch of Overwatch 2, and then more going forward. And I think it's unrealistic to expect every team to have one tank player that can play all the heroes. I mean, I'm already critical of Overwatch League teams that have 2 DPS players, because that's not enough to cover the entire roster. Even I think 3 sometimes isn't cutting it. And so I think that we're still going to see a ton of teams running 2 to 3 main tanks, or 2 to 3 tanks, to make up for this. And so while they may not be perpetual starters like they are now, they're still going to be in the league, and they're still going to have a place on the team. Some of them may leave because of the direction of the game, but at the end of the day, I think this is ultimately better for the game itself, and I think that it will make for a better experience. So those are my general thoughts on things from that live stream. Let's move on to the community creator Q&A thing. I have a handful of questions from this one, and then I have a lot from the AMA, so I want to try to get through this one pretty quickly, because I think a lot of this stuff is not the most interesting, but it's there. So one of the first things that I wanted to pull out is that the team was asked about how they're going to kind of improve competitive seasons going forward, if they're going to make any changes to them, and the team basically said that they are planning on doing more to seasons to make them more unique, and also to make it more meaningful throughout. And so it's not just like you do your placements when the season starts and then you never touch it again until the beginning of the next season, or you just wait until the end of the season to do it, which is what I usually do. And so that's something that they talked about, trying to find ways to make them more unique and more kind of make it easier to retain you to keep playing throughout. An interesting one was in the live stream that talked about over health, which is going to be how they change the way that the over shields and over armor work. So stuff like Brigitte's ultimate ability or Lucio's ultimate ability, where they add those extra health bars, or that extra health to your health bar. They're changing that from being, specific over shields or over armor to just one universal over health. And so there is no, damage reduction to over armor like there is currently. And over shields are basically not being changed at all. They're just changing the name of them to just all be an over health. And so there are certain like trade-offs for stuff like this, right? Like over armor normally gives you damage reduction. It won't anymore. So how do you go about that? That's something I'll talk about a little bit later because they talk about it in the AMA. But then you have something like Wrecking Ball, whose passive ability is that his when he uses his E, not a passive ability, when he uses his E and he gets his shields up, the adaptive shielding, that doesn't give you ult charge when you shoot him when the adaptive shielding is up. So they said basically, that probably, that's something that as it is currently is still in place, but will probably go away based on the changes to tanks going forward. So that is something talked about. I found very, very interesting. Something else I talked about here a little bit, but I'll go more depth in later, is that they were asked if 5v5 would get a round of testing on the experimental card, in which it said probably not, and if they did test it, it would likely be done in some other way, so probably an alpha or a beta, which I will touch more on a little bit later. The team was asked if they were interested in implementing a tournament system, which they said they are, but it'll take a lot of time before they get there because they're focused on other things first. So while they would like to, they probably won't do it soon. When asked about how the maps in Overwatch 1 will work in 5v5, they said that most of the maps are working pretty well for 5v5, especially some of the newer maps, which are obviously designed probably with the potential move to 5v5 already in mind. And so the maps likely won't get many changes. If they do get changes, it'll likely be older maps, and it'll likely be them adding some smaller things like cover or something like that. So not a ton of huge changes. The team was asked if there were any heroes that could potentially kind of have role swaps. And as they are working on the game, they said there are none right now, but they are potentially working on more. Sim to support as one of those. May to tank is another one. They said that more social features might be coming to Overwatch 2, guilds being the big one. That was kind of leaked back at BlizzCon Online, so we'll see more about that if that comes true. Flex queue, they are still working on that. That is still going to be a thing that exists in Overwatch 2. It is not going away anytime. They were asked about Immortality Field and whether or not it would be removed. They said it probably won't be because they don't like the idea of just removing an ability. They would more than likely just kind of change things for it. They would probably just have it so it doesn't work maybe the same way it does, but they're always looking at it and seeing how they can change it. And the final question that was asked in this Q&A was about LGBTQ plus Pride content. Obviously, June is Pride Month, so they were just questions about that. And they said that more would be coming soon. So sometime next month, I would expect maybe we will get some cool new Pride content. So I mentioned at the beginning of this video that it may be split up into 2 parts. I am going to do just that. The whole video in one go ended up being about 40 minutes long, a little more than that. So this is going to be the end of this first part. I will have the second part up for you all tomorrow. Same time as always, noon, so you can expect that tomorrow. And yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. And comment down below your thoughts on anything that I talked about that took place either from that PvP live stream or from the community content creator Q&A. Anything you found interesting from that, let me know in the comments down below. But that is all for me for today. Thank you so much once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.